Ambassador Veltris stood in the great hall of the Galactic Council and stared at the empty seat. The chair had been empty for 50 years now. No dust gathered on it because the cleaning machine still worked. But no human had sat there since the day they all vanished. He remembered that day clearly. He had been young then, just a junior diplomat learning the ways of galactic politics. The humans had been a joke to most species. They were small, weak, and lived such short lives. They talked about strange things like mercy and forgiveness. They refused to destroy their enemies completely, which every other species knew was the only way to win a war. And then one morning, they were gone. Every human on every world. Every space station, every ship. Gone. No bodies. No messages, no warnings. Just empty rooms and silent corridors where humans used to walk and laugh and argue about things that seemed so unimportant. The council had celebrated it first. Good riddance, they said. Now the real powers could run the galaxy properly. No more humans slowing things down with their endless talk about rights and dignity and peaceful solutions. Veltris walked to his seat as other ambassadors filed into the hall. The Vrixian delegation sat on one side, their blue scales shimmering with anger. The Korthan Empire sat on the other, their massive forms hunched forward with aggression. These two powers had been arguing about trade routes for 3 years now. The arguments were getting worse. In the old days, the humans would have fixed this. Ambassador Dong Min had been famous for his patience. He would sit with both sides for hours, days, weeks if needed. He would find the thing they both wanted and build a bridge between them. Veltris had watched him do it dozens of times. But Dong Min was gone. They were all gone. The session began badly and got worse. The Vrixian ambassador accused the Korthans of stealing cargo ships. The Korthan general called the Vrixians cowards and thieves. Within minutes, both sides were standing, shouting, threatening war. Veltris tried to speak. He tried to calm them down. But he did not have the skill. He did not have the words. He was not human. The Korthan general slammed his fist on the table. The sound echoed through the hall like thunder. He declared that his empire would blockade all Vrixian trade routes starting tomorrow. The Vrixian ambassador hissed and said that any blockade would be considered an act of war. The session ended with both sides storming out. War was coming. Everyone knew it, and no one knew how to stop it. Veltris stayed behind in the empty hall. He looked at the human seat again and remembered the last time he had spoken to Dong Min. It was the night before the humans vanished. The old ambassador had looked tired but peaceful. "We tried to show you another way," Dong Min had said. "We really did. But you cannot teach someone who does not want to learn. Perhaps you will understand when we are gone." Veltris had laughed at the time. He thought the old human was being dramatic. Humans were always dramatic. They cried at music and told stories about heroes who died for love. They were sentimental and soft. Now, standing alone in the silent hall, Veltris finally understood. The humans had not been weak. They had been patient. They had been holding the galaxy together with their soft words and gentle ways, and no one had noticed until they stopped. He walked to his office and called up the economic reports. The numbers were bad. Very bad. The humans had managed most of the interstellar banking systems. Their algorithms kept trade flowing smoothly between 1,000 different species with 1,000 different currencies. Without them, the system was failing. Prices changed wildly from day to day. Ships sat in ports waiting for payments that never came. Entire planets were running out of food because no one could figure out how to make the old human trade routes work anymore. His assistant, a young Cathrian named Zelrose, entered with more bad news. The Yenthari system had collapsed into civil war. The Drelix plague was spreading again. 3 more species had declared bankruptcy. Veltris listened and felt very tired. He was old now, much older than any human ever lived, but he felt like a child trying to solve problems made for adults. The humans had made it look easy. They had smiled and talked and somehow made everything work. Now nothing worked anymore. He dismissed his assistant and sat alone in the darkness. Outside his window, ships moved slowly between the great stations of the Council. Once, human ships had been common here. Fast little vessels painted with bright colors, carrying doctors and engineers and teachers to every corner of the galaxy. The humans had been everywhere, helping everyone, asking for so little in return. Why had they left? This question had haunted Viltres for 50 years. Some said humans had found a new home far away. Some said they had destroyed themselves in some secret disaster. Some said they had never been real at all, just a shared dream that the galaxy had woken up from. But Viltres remembered Dong Min's words. Perhaps you will understand when we are gone. The humans had left on purpose. They had chosen to go. But why? He looked at the human seat one more time and made a decision. He would find out. He would discover where the humans had gone and why they had left. He would bring them back if he could. And if he could not, he would at least learn what they had tried to teach him. The galaxy was falling apart. Wars were coming. Species were dying. Systems were failing. And in the middle of it all, one old ambassador finally began to ask the question that should have been asked 50 years ago. What had the humans known that everyone else had missed? Viltres began to gather his files and make his plans. He would need a ship and a crew. He would need to break council law and travel to the Forbidden World. He would need to go to Earth. But first, he needed to survive the coming war. The Vrixians and Corthans would start fighting within days. Other powers would join. The galaxy would burn, and no one would be left to stop it. Unless he could find the humans in time. Unless he could bring them. Home. Dr. Yelshon had not slept in 4 days. The plague was killing her patients faster than she could count them. Every hour, more bodies were carried out of the hospital. Every hour, more sick people came in to take their place. She stood in the medical archive room, searching through old files with shaking hands. The computers held thousands of treatment plans, all written by human doctors who had worked on Anthro 7 before the disappearance. She had read every one of them. None of them worked anymore. The red scale fever had changed. It had become something new, something the old treatments could not touch. Yelshan needed a new solution, but she did not know how to find one. She had followed every protocol. She had tried every combination. Nothing worked. She slammed her fist against the wall and screamed in frustration. Her logical Anthrosian mind could not understand why the treatments failed. The science was correct. The methods were proper. Everything should work, but it did not. A memory came to her then. She remembered sitting in this same room 20 years ago, watching a human doctor named Mi-san work on a similar problem. A child had been dying from a strange illness that no one could identify. The logical approach was to run more tests, gather more data, wait for the computers to find an answer. But Mi-san had not waited. She had sat with the child, held his hand, and talked to him. She had asked about his life, his family, his favorite foods. And somewhere in that conversation, she had found the answer. The child had eaten a poisonous fruit from a tree in his backyard. No test would have found that. Only compassion had revealed the truth. My son had tried to teach Yelshan this method. She called it listening with your heart. Yelshan had dismissed it as human nonsense. Anthrosians did not have hearts. They had logic. Now, standing in the archive room while her patients died. Yelshan wished she had listened more carefully. Far across the galaxy. On Space Station Meridian 7, Engineer Thaxel was facing a different kind of death. The station was dying, Slowly but surely, power systems flickered. Life support failed for hours at a time. The hull creaked with sounds that should not be there. Thaxel had followed every manual, checked every system, run every diagnostic. Everything looked correct on the screens. But the station was still dying, and he did not know why. He floated through the dark corridors, listening. The humans had built this station 100 years ago. They had maintained it until the day they vanished. Since then, the alien crew had tried their best to keep it running. But something was wrong. Something they could not see. He passed the old human quarters, sealed and empty. A name was still written on one of the doors. Hyun Woo. Thaxel remembered him. The old human engineer had been strange, even for a human. He talked to the machines like they were alive. He touched the walls and smiled as if he could feel. Something no one else could feel. Hyun Woo had tried to train a young Thaxel before the disappearance. He would take the alien engineer through the station, pointing at things that seemed perfectly normal. The manual tells you what to do, Hyun Woo had said. Experience tells you what will happen, but the station herself will tell you what she needs. You just have to listen. Thaxel had not understood. He had studied the manuals, learned the procedures, followed every rule. But the station was still dying. And now he was beginning to wonder if Hyun Woo had been trying to teach him something that could not be found in any manual. He placed his hand on the cold metal wall and closed his eyes. He tried to feel what the human had felt. He tried to listen. At first, there was nothing. Just cold metal and silence. But then, very faintly, he felt a vibration. A tiny tremor that was not supposed to be there. He followed it through the corridors, through the maintenance tunnels, down into the deep heart of the station. And there he found it. A small crack in the main support beam. So small that no scanner would find it. But Thaxel could feel it now, feel the station crying out in pain. He understood at last. The humans had not just maintained the station. They had loved it. And love could find things that logic could not see. On the beautiful world of Lyri, where art was everything, a young painter named Silver stared at her empty canvas. She had not painted anything in months. She had not felt any desire to create. The colors seemed dull. The shapes seemed meaningless. Everything she made looked the same as everything else. She walked through the grand galleries where the masters had once displayed their work. The alien paintings were technically perfect. Every line was precise. Every color was balanced. But they were cold, dead, without soul. In a small room at the back of the gallery, she found the human section. It was dusty now, forgotten by most visitors. The paintings here were different. They were rough, imperfect, sometimes ugly. But they made Silver feel something. They made her want to cry. One painting caught her eye. It showed a sunset over water, painted in wild strokes of orange and red. The technique was poor by Lyrian standards. A child could do better. But somehow, looking at it, Silver could feel the warmth of that sun, the peace of that moment, the love the artist felt for that simple scene. The signature at the bottom said U-na.sil single quotes ver, numbered U-na. The human artist had come to Lyri many years ago to teach. The Lyran masters had laughed at her primitive methods. She did not measure her colors. She did not plan her compositions. She just painted whatever she felt, whatever she saw in her dreams. But the students had loved her. Yuna had taught them that art was not about perfection. It was about truth. It was about putting your soul on the canvas and letting others see who you really were. After Yuna left, the masters had forbidden her methods. They said human art was corrupting the young. They said proper Lyrian art followed rules and traditions. They said feeling was less important than technique. And now the galleries were empty. The young artists had stopped creating. The old masters made technically perfect paintings that no one wanted to see. Art was dying on Lyri, and no one knew how to save it. Silver looked at Yuna's rough, imperfect, beautiful painting and felt tears running down her face. She understood now what the human had tried to teach them. Art was not about what you could do. It was about who you were. She went back to her studio and picked up her brush. For the first time in months, she began to paint. Not what she was supposed to paint. Not what the masters would approve. She painted what she felt, what she feared, what she loved. The painting was imperfect. The technique was poor, but it was alive. Across the galaxy, the same story repeated itself. Everywhere the humans had worked, everything they had touched was falling apart. Not because their systems had failed, but because the people they left behind had never truly learned what they had tried to teach. The galaxy had wanted human hands, not human hearts. They had wanted human skills, not human wisdom. And now they were paying the price. The unraveling had begun, and no one knew how to stop it. The ship was called the Last Question. It was old and small, barely able to make the journey to the Forbidden Soul System. But it was all that Ambassador Veltras could find on such short notice, with the credits he had secretly gathered over the past 2 years. He stood on the bridge and looked at his crew. They were not soldiers or explorers. They were survivors, each one carrying their own reasons for making this illegal journey. Dr. Yelshan sat at the medical station, her eyes tired but determined. She had left Anthros 7 after the plague finally ended, but not before it killed 2 million of her people. She believed the answers were on Earth. She believed the humans had left something behind that could prevent such tragedies in the future. Engineer Thaxel worked at the control panels, checking systems with careful hands. He had saved Station Meridian 7, but just barely. The station would need human help to truly recover. He had come to find that help, or at least to understand how humans had kept things running for so long. Warrior Krelinak of the Vorfin clans stood guard at the door. He was massive, covered in scars from 100 battles. But his eyes were haunted. He had fought in the war between the Vrixians and Korthans. He had seen entire planets burned to ash because no one knew how to make peace. He had come because he wanted to learn another way. And finally, Archivist Pigzan sat in the corner, surrounded by datapads and old documents. She was small and quiet, dedicated to preserving knowledge. She had spent her whole life studying human records, trying to understand the species that everyone else had dismissed. She believed the humans had been hiding something important. The journey to Sol took 3 weeks. Council ships patrolled the borders of the Forbidden Zone, but Veltras knew the old patrol routes. He had studied them for years, planning for this moment. When Earth finally appeared on their screens, everyone gathered on the bridge to look. It was beautiful, blue and green and white, floating in the darkness like a precious gem. It looked alive, healthy, cared for. Not the dead world everyone expected. They landed near what the maps called a city. The buildings were tall and clean. The streets were empty but maintained. Machines moved through the parks, cutting grass and cleaning fountains. Everything was preserved perfectly, waiting for people who had been gone for 50 years. Krelinak kept his weapon ready as they walked through the silent streets. But there was no danger here. Only emptiness. Only waiting. They found the archive building at the center of the city. It was huge, white, covered in symbols from every species in the galaxy. Above the door, words were carved in 100 languages. They all said the same thing: for when you are ready to learn. Inside, the building was filled with light. Screens covered every wall, showing images and documents from human history. Books lined the shelves, written in every galactic language. And at the center of it all A holographic projector waited for them. When they approached, it activated. A human figure appeared before them. He was old, with gray hair and kind eyes. He wore the robes of a galactic ambassador. Veltras recognized him immediately. It was Sang-Woo, one of the greatest human diplomats who had ever lived. The one who had ended the Trellix Wars without firing a single shot. The one who had talked the Yenthari down from destroying themselves 3 separate times. The one who had been called the Peacemaker. "If you are seeing this," the hologram said, "that enough time has passed. You have come looking for answers. I hope you are ready to hear them." The crew gathered around, silent and waiting. Sang-Woo's image smiled sadly. "We did not leave because we hated you. We did not leave because we gave up on you. We left because our presence was preventing you from learning the most important lessons." He waved his hand and images appeared around him. Scenes from human history. Wars and plagues and disasters. But also moments of kindness, sacrifice, and hope. For 200 years, we tried to teach you by example. We showed you that mercy creates lasting peace, while vengeance creates endless war. We showed you that cooperation builds civilizations, while domination destroys them. We showed you that strength without wisdom leads only to extinction. The images changed to show humans working across the galaxy. Doctors healing the sick. Engineers building bridges. Teachers showing children how to read. Artists creating beauty from nothing. We gave you our best people. Our doctors, our engineers, our teachers, our artists. We mediated your wars. We fixed your systems. We taught your young. We showed you beauty. But you never asked the most important question. The hologram leaned forward, and his eyes seemed to look directly at each of them. You never asked why we did things differently. You only mocked us for not doing them your way. Dr. Yelshin lowered her head. She remembered how she had dismissed Mison's methods, how she had thought human medicine was primitive and emotional. Vaxel thought of Hyung-woo talking to the station like it was alive. He had called the old engineer crazy. He had been wrong. Krelinek remembered the human soldiers he had fought beside. They had refused to kill prisoners. They had refused to bomb cities. He had called them weak. But they had won more battles than he ever had. The hologram continued. We did not vanish. We evolved. We found a way to become something more than flesh and blood. But we did not want to abandon you. So we left this archive. Everything we learned, everything we discovered, everything we tried to teach you. It is all here. Sang-Woo smiled again, and this time there was hope in his expression. We are still watching. We are still waiting. When you are ready to learn, truly ready, we will know. And we will come back to help you grow. The hologram flickered and began to fade. But before it disappeared, Sang-Woo spoke one last time. The galaxy is dying because you forgot the most important truth. Strength is not the ability to destroy. Strength is the ability to choose not to destroy. Wisdom is not knowing everything. Wisdom is knowing that you do not know everything. And love is not. Weakness. Love is the only force in the universe that can build something lasting. The hologram vanished, leaving the crew standing in silence. Veltras looked around at the archive, at the millions of documents and recordings waiting to be studied. The humans had left them a gift, a second chance. The question was whether the galaxy would be smart enough to use it. He turned to his crew. We have work to do. We need to bring this knowledge back to the Council. We need to show them what the humans tried to teach us. Dr. Yelshin nodded. I will study their medical records. Learn what Misun tried to show me. Vaxel stepped forward. I will learn their engineering methods. The real methods. The ones that came from the heart. Krelinek sheathed his weapon. I will learn their way of war, the way that ends with peace instead of death. Pixen was already downloading files, her eyes bright with excitement. There is so much here, more than we could study in a lifetime. Veltris smiled for the first time in years. Then we had better get started. The journey home would be long. The council might not listen. The galaxy might be too far gone to save. But for the first time since the humans left, there was hope that the archive was open. The lessons were waiting. And somewhere out there, beyond the stars, the humans were watching to see if their faith in the galaxy had been justified. The council hall was filled with shouting. Veltra stood at the center of the storm, holding the data crystal that contained everything from the human archive. Around him, the ambassadors screamed at each other, their voices blending into a roar of anger and fear. The war between the Vrixians and Korthans had spread. 12 other species had joined the fighting. 3 worlds had been destroyed completely. Billions were dead, and billions more would die before it ended, and no one knew how to stop it. Veltris had returned from Earth with hope in his heart. But the council did not want hope. They wanted someone to blame. And the humans, gone for 55 years now, made the perfect target. War Master Drek Thiel of the Vorthan clans stood at the front of the hall, his massive form blocking the light. He pointed at Veltris with a clawed hand. "You broke council law," he growled. "You traveled to the Forbidden World. You brought back human lies. And now you want us to beg for their return? Never." The crowd roared in agreement. Drekthal continued, his voice rising with each word. "We survived before the humans came. We will survive now that they are gone. The galaxy does not need soft words and gentle methods. The galaxy needs strength. We need warriors, not peacekeepers. We need power, not compassion. More cheering, more shouting." Veltris felt his hope beginning to fade. Then a quiet voice spoke from the back of the hall. "May I say something?" The crowd turned. A young Cathrian woman stood at the back, small and alone. She wore simple clothes, not the fancy robes of an ambassador. Her name was G1. Drekthal laughed. "What is this? A child wants to speak? Go home, little one. This is a matter for warriors and leaders." But G1 walked forward, and something in her eyes made the crowd go silent. There was a strength there that did not come from muscles or weapons, a certainty that did not come from power. "My name was given to me by a human," she said. Her voice was soft, but somehow it carried through the entire hall. "Ambassador, my son found me when I was small. My parents had died in the food riots on Kethris Prime. I was alone, starving, waiting to die." She reached the center of the hall and stood beside Veltris. The old ambassador looked at her with surprise and growing respect. "Mizan did not have to help me," Guy-1 continued. "I was nothing, a hungry child from a poor world. But she took me in. She fed me. She taught me to read and write. She gave me a name and a purpose." She looked around at the ambassadors, meeting their eyes one by one. "She taught me that strength is not about power. Strength is about when and why you choose to use it. A warrior who destroys everything is not strong. He is afraid. A leader who cannot make peace is not powerful. She is weak." Drekthal snarled. Pretty words from a pretty child. But words do not win wars. Ki-1 smiled sadly. "No, they do not. But they prevent wars. And that is something none of you have been able to do." She held up a data pad. "I have spent 10 years studying the human records. Not the ones from the archive, but the ones that were always available. The ones no one bothered to read because they thought humans were unimportant." She activated the pad, and a holographic display appeared above her. Charts, graphs, lists of dates and events. Do you know how many wars were prevented by human mediators? 40. 40 wars that would have killed trillions stopped it before they could start. And do you know how? Not with weapons, not with threats, with patience, with understanding, with the simple act of listening. The display changed. Medical reports, survival rates, cure statistics. Do you know how many plagues were stopped by human doctors? 15 extinction-level outbreaks. Species that exist today only because humans cared enough to help them. Not because they were paid. Not because they were ordered. Because they wanted to. Another change. Economic data, trade records, financial systems. Do you know how many economic collapses were prevented by human bankers? 8. 8 times the entire galactic economy was about to fail, and humans quietly fixed it. They asked for nothing in return. They did not even tell anyone what they had done. One more change. Conservation reports, species survival data, environmental records. Do you know how many species were saved from extinction by human scientists? 23. 23 species that were dying. Brought back by humans who spent their lives working to save creatures that would never thank them. G1 lowered the pad and looked at the silent council. We did not lose humanity. We rejected them. We mocked their kindness and called it weakness. We laughed at their mercy and called it foolishness. We ignored their wisdom and called it primitive. And now look at us. She gestured at the war-torn galaxy displayed on the main screens. Burning worlds. Dying fleets. Endless destruction. We are the primitive ones. We are the foolish ones. We are the weak ones. Because we never learned the most important lesson they tried to teach us. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. They were holding us together, and we never even noticed. The hall was completely silent. Even Drekthal had nothing to say. Veltras stepped forward. The archive contains everything the humans knew. Their methods for peace. Their approaches to healing. Their ways of building and creating and growing. It is all there, waiting for us to learn. He looked at the council, at the exhausted faces and haunted eyes. We have a choice. We can continue as we are. We can keep fighting until nothing is left. We can prove that the humans were wrong to have faith in us. He raised the data crystal high above his head. Or we can learn. We can study what they tried to teach us. We can become what they believed we could become. We can prove that their sacrifice was not in vain. The vote was called. Ambassador by ambassador, species by species, the council made its choice that it was close. Closer than Veltras had hoped. Many still believed that strength meant destruction, that mercy was weakness, that the old ways were the only ways. But in the end, the vote passed. By a margin of just 7 votes, the council agreed to open the human archive, to study their methods, to learn what they had tried so desperately to teach Dot. It was not a victory. The war was still raging. Billions were still dying. The galaxy was still broken. But it was a beginning. G1 stood beside Veltras as the council chamber emptied. The old ambassador looked at the young woman with gratitude. You changed their minds, he said. I could not have done that. G1 shook her head. I only reminded them of what they already knew. Deep down, everyone knows that kindness is stronger than cruelty. They just need permission to believe it. She looked at the empty human seat. Me son taught me that. And now, maybe, I can teach it to others. Veltras nodded slowly. The humans would be proud of you. Kai-1 smiled, but there were tears in her eyes. I hope so. I really hope so. Outside the hall, the galaxy burned. But inside, for the first time in 55 years, there was something that had been missing since the day the humans left. There was hope. 1 year had passed since the council vote. 1 year of studying the human archive. 1 year of learning lessons that should have been learned long ago. The changes came slowly at first. Small things that most people did not notice. A peace treaty here. A medical breakthrough there. A new approach to building ships that somehow made them last longer and work better. But the small things added up. The Vorthan clans were the first warrior species to adopt what they called the new doctrine. Kralanak had brought the teachings back from Earth, and the young warriors had listened. Instead of destroying enemies completely, they learned to leave them a path to surrender. Instead of burning cities, they learned to protect civilians. It felt wrong at first, against every instinct they had. But they tried it anyway. And it worked. The wars that used to last for generations now ended in months. The enemies that used to rise again and again in revenge now became allies. The Vorthan reputation changed from terror to respect. Other species saw what they had done and began to follow. Dr. Yelshan returned to Anthros VII with new knowledge. She taught young doctors what Mi-Sun had tried to teach her. Listen to the patient. See them as people, not problems. Feel what they are feeling. The cold, logical Anthrosian approach softened. Not much, but enough. When the next plague came, they were ready. Not just with treatments, but with compassion. The survival rate was higher than ever before. And the doctors found that they themselves were happier, more fulfilled, more alive. Engineer Thaxel established a new training program for station crews. He taught them to love their machines, not just maintain them. He taught them to listen with their hands, to feel problems before they became disasters. Station Meridian 7 was repaired completely, better than new. And the methods spread to other stations, other ships, other worlds. The artist Silver opened a school on Lyri. She taught the young ones what Yuna had taught her. Paint with your heart. Create from your soul. Make imperfect things that tell the truth. The galleries filled with new art that made people feel again. Art that was alive. And across the galaxy, in 1,000 places, similar changes happened. Small acts of kindness. Unexpected moments of mercy. Choices to build instead of destroy. The galaxy was still broken, but it was beginning to heal. On the anniversary of humanity's disappearance, Ambassador Veltras stood in the council hall and activated the great transmitter. Every species in the galaxy was listening. Every world, every station, every ship. His message was simple. We understand now, he said. We are ready. Please come home. The message went out into the darkness, traveling at the speed of light toward every corner of the universe. And then there was silence. Days passed. Nothing happened. The council waited, hope fading with each moment. Perhaps the humans had truly left forever. Perhaps they were too far away to hear. Perhaps they no longer cared, but Veltras did not give up. G1 stood beside him, and together they watched the stars. On the 7th day, something happened on Earth. A pillar of light appeared in the center of the old capital city. It was bright and warm, like concentrated sunlight. The machines that maintained the empty streets stopped their work and turned to watch. From the light, a figure emerged. He was old, older than he had been in the holographic message. His hair was white now, his face lined with age. But his eyes were the same, kind, patient, full of hope. Dong-Min, the ambassador who had spoken the last words before humanity vanished, stepped onto Earth's soil for the first time in 55 years. More pillars of light appeared around him. More humans emerged, young and old, men and women, all of them returning to the world they had left behind. The news spread through the galaxy like fire. The humans were back. After 55 years, they had returned. Veltras took the first ship to Earth. Guy 1 came with him, along with Dr. Yelshan, Engineer Thaxel, Warrior Kralanak, an archivist Pixian. The crew of The Last Question reunited for one more journey. They found Dongmin waiting for them in the garden, where they had first discovered the archive. He was sitting on a stone bench, looking up at the stars. When he saw them approaching, he smiled and rose to greet them. "You came," he said. "We hoped you would." Veltras could barely speak. After 55 years of searching, 55 years of wondering, the answers were standing right in front of him. Why? He finally managed. "Why did you leave? And why did you come back?" Dongmin sat down again and gestured for them to join him. The crew gathered around, and the old human began to speak. "We left because you needed to learn on your own. As long as we were here, you could always rely on us. You could call us when things got hard. You could let us solve your problems. You never had to grow." He looked at the stars above. "We evolved, yes. We found a way to become more than we were. But we did not leave the universe. We watched. We waited. We hoped." He smiled sadly. "There were times when we almost gave up. Times when it seemed like you would destroy yourselves completely. Times when the darkness seemed too strong to overcome." He looked at Veltras, at G1, at the crew of The Last Question. "But you surprised us. You started to learn. Slowly, painfully, but you learned. You found the archive. You listened to the lessons. You began to change." Dongmin stood and walked to the edge of the garden. Below, the city was coming back to life. Humans walked the streets again, their voices filling the air with sound and life. "We came back because you finally asked. Not demanded. Not begged. Just asked. With humility. With hope. With the understanding that you still have so much to learn." He turned back to face them. "We are not here to save you. We are here to help you save yourselves. We will teach again, but this time you must truly listen. You must ask why, not just how. You must learn to feel, not just think." Veltras stepped forward. "We are ready. I promise you, we are ready." Dongmin laughed softly. "You are not ready. No one ever is. But you are willing to try. And that is all we ever asked." The first joint Human Galactic Council session was held 1 month later. The hall was full for the first time in decades. Every species sent their best representatives. The human delegation sat in their old seats, and the empty chair was empty no more. The session was not easy. There were arguments and disagreements, and moments of doubt. The galaxy was still broken, still struggling, still learning. But something had changed. For the first time, everyone was trying. G1 spoke at the end of the session. She stood before the assembled council and looked at Dongmin, sitting in the seat that had been empty her entire life. "My mother gave me life," she said, "but a human gave me hope. She taught me that kindness is strength, that mercy is power, that love is the only thing worth fighting for." She turned to address the entire council. "We have been given a second chance. The humans came back because they believed we could be better. They risked everything on that belief. And now it is our turn to prove them right." She smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like the little girl that Mizan had saved so long ago. "Let us begin." The galaxy was not healed that day. It would take generations to undo the damage, to learn all the lessons, to become what the humans believed they could become. There would be setbacks and failures and moments when it seemed like all hope was lost. But the darkness had been pushed back. The light had returned. And somewhere in that light, the galaxy found something it had lost 55 years ago. That hope got, and the knowledge that even when things seem broken beyond repair, there is always a chance to start again. To learn. To grow. To become something better than you were before. The humans had taught them that. And finally, at long last, The galaxy was ready to listen.